Hey, welcome to the Healthy Postnatal Body podcast with your postnatal expert, Peter Lapp. That, as always, will be me. Today, I'm talking about an interesting case we had this week where someone got in touch saying that she'd had twins 10 months ago. And even though she was nearly back to her pre-pregnancy weight and she'd had PT for 5 months, she still had a big belly. So I'm going to take you through all the causes that could be behind this sort of thing. What I told her, we did a little video chat, a little Zoom chat, and everything I told her, and what the solution is likely to be. Right? It'll be fun, I promise. It'll be practical. Right, here we go. Hey, welcome to the Healthy Postnatal Body podcast with, indeed, me, Peter Lapp. This is a podcast for the 20th of February. And I'm joined here today by Red, Buddy, and Little Kitty, who are all, relatively speaking, sound asleep. So that's always nice. I hope you're well. I hope you had a good week. I'm recording this on a Friday because it's half term. So I know a lot of you will have been sitting at home with the children this week. And I'm just getting this out ahead of Sunday because I have a bit of time today. How nice is that? You know, it's half term and therefore people are going away for a little while, and that means old Pete has a bit of time to get stuff done a bit quicker. So what I am talking about today is a little email that I had from somebody. Somebody got in touch during the week, basically asking if I offered any one-to-one support with in addition to the Healthy Postnatal Body program. She sent it to the info@healthypostnatalbody.com email address. And she just, obviously that is just an online thing, and not everybody is familiar with council personal training. Outrageously enough, outside Edinburgh, not everybody knows about it. So she said, do you offer any one-to-one support? I've had PT for my diastasis recta for 5 months, but it's made no difference. I'd like to know if I'm doing everything correctly. Right, so I just said, yeah, I usually do them one-to-ones in Edinburgh, but I've done a few via Zoom. What exactly are you looking for? Just a bit of general advice or some help running through specific exercises? So then she explained a little bit more to me. So she had twins almost 10 months ago. She has an older child as well. And although I'm nearly back to my pre-pregnancy weight, I still have a very large tummy. I did have diastasis recti and still do, but I've been told only 1 finger wide. I've had a personal trainer for this for 5 months, but still have a big belly. She said it's bloating. It's just huge and hard. My diastasis recti is only 1 finger wide, and she has told me I engage it okay, etc. She said she's happy to join one of the courses, blah, 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 as I don't feel what I'm doing is currently working. I've had an IgG intolerance test, and I'm now removing certain foods, and I've done for 3 weeks, but still no change. I also have gastritis, having meds, but still have bloating. I am at a loss. Apologies for clearing my throat. And I get similar emails like this regularly, so I just said, listen, I'll happily do a little Zoom chat, half an hour, 40 minutes. And I then like your permission to talk about this on the podcast. That's usually how I do it. So, if you have questions, like I said, info@healthypostnatalbody.com or peter@healthypostnatalbody.com, right? I answer every single email. I don't read them all out, but I answer every single one of them. So we had a little chat. We took 40 minutes and we had a chat. And usually when people come to me and they say I've had PT for 5 months, I have bloating, my initial instinct is always I assume the PT knows what they're doing. So that's the starting point. So then if you have bloating or a round belly, there's usually 1 or 2 things are happening there. So that's where we'll start. And then I'll tell you what the real deal was here. And it's probably a combination of them all. So possible issues, possible things that are going on. Bloating. Now, bloating usually, and I've done a podcast about this before, or I've done a blog about this before. It's there somewhere. Bloating usually builds up throughout the day, and it's hardly ever completely solid. So that's the first, is it really bloating sort of deal? So bloating, usually you start with a flatter tummy, and as you eat and drink throughout the day, your size starts to increase a little bit. And this can be quite severe. I remember that picture that Michelle, what's her surname again? I can't remember, because I'm terrible with names, not because I'm rude. Michelle posted that. I might post it in the. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll probably see it, because I'll find it. The post pizza baby bloat. Everybody suffers from this. Prenatal, postnatal. It's completely normal. You have a Domino's. You can't keep a flat stomach. You eat a whole big Cadbury's fruit and nut bar, whatever they are. Then again, you can't help but bloat. You're likely to bloat if you do that. My experience is, and quite a few studies have shown, that postpartum women have this reaction more to foods that they didn't necessarily react to prenatal. Right? Something changes. Not permanently, usually, but I've had people before, they can't even look at an apple postpartum without bloating. Whereas they always used to be fine with them. It used to be like their favorite fruit, and now they look at a Granny Smith and their stomach starts swelling. What you don't usually need is an allergy test. Right? This is my experience with people who get sold allergy tests, because you pay for these things, is that they usually get told to cut out dairy and gluten and all that sort of stuff. They turn out to be allergic or intolerant, in air quotes, to a wide range of things. And I'm not a big fan. If you find you bloat after brown pasta but not after white pasta, you don't have to cut out gluten from your diet. If you bloat after all types of pasta but you don't bloat after eating a slice of toast, then again you don't have to cut out gluten or wheat or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? It's too wide a brush that they're painting with in quite a few of these things. I'm not saying they're all useless. I'm just saying that most of them are. And they're definitely a waste of money. I find the best way to do this, and this is something, I think it was Juliana Haver, the plant-based dietitian that came onto the podcast a while ago. She spoke about this. I think it was her. I'm fairly sure it was her. Just use a food journal. Just write down what you're eating and how you're reacting to certain foods. So you say, I had an apple and all of a sudden my belly's the size of a balloon. I still feel great afterwards, but my belly's just swollen. Okay, then you say, no, okay, maybe if you're trying to prevent bloating, and for diastasis recti recovery, we kind of are. Because, diastasis recti is caused by internal pressure and all that, and bloating doesn't help. So then you cut out apples and you replace them with, I don't know, oranges or mangoes or whatever you find you don't bloat with. If you find that you're fine after milk, but you're not fine after chocolate milk, then you cut out milk. Then you cut out chocolate milk rather than cutting out all dairy. You're fine with, I could give a million examples, but you know where I'm going with this. You write down what you eat, and then you write down how you responded to that like 10 minutes later. You can do this on your phone. I'm not talking about calorie tracking here, right? I'm talking about food response tracking. I'm talking about I ate this and I don't feel great. And after a week, you probably see a trend that certain foods make you bloat, and those are the foods that you cut out. They're not food groups that you cut out. Very, very rarely is it an entire food group that you have to get rid of postpartum. I'm not talking about general food allergies and all that sort of stuff. I'm just talking about postpartum bloating and all that sort of thing. But like I said, bloating starts with a flat stomach and then builds up throughout the day. And it's usually not, what did she say, very hard or rock solid. It's just huge and hard, is what she said. And bloating, you can usually keep poking at it. Do you know what I mean? You take a Daflatine and half the air comes out. So this is not what that sounded like. So then it could be something like visceral fat, which is basically fat around your organs. You have fat underneath your skin, with subcutaneous fat, and then you have visceral fat, which is around your organs. And this is usually in that midsection. And we know that, the visceral fat that you have increases a little bit throughout your pregnancy. And some studies show that it increases, but doesn't necessarily decrease in the same way that other fat does postpartum. I'll link to that, to that study. Basically, it just doesn't decrease as fast for some women. And that's an interesting one. So it could be that. It could just be, it's swollen because there's still fat around the organs. Possible. Definitely possible. If that is what it is, and it's not bloating and it's a bit of visceral fat left, then there's some evidence that a higher protein, low carb approach works well for that. And again, I'll link to the study that shows this. Now, to be fair, they're small studies and they only talk about moderately low carb. So not like full keto and cutting out all carbohydrates. They just say, go lower carb for a little while. And it's likely to have something to do with the insulin response and all that sort of stuff. Go lower carb for a while, slightly higher protein, still be in a calorific deficit, and then the visceral fat will kind of go. Okay, and that's possible. That's possible, and it's quite often the case a little bit. Right? These things can take a while to settle. There's also another option. You've had PT for 5 months. And, your hormones, you're 10 months postpartum. So your hormone, if you're still breastfeeding, your hormones are still kind of all over the place a little bit. They'll still take a while to settle. So that could resolve itself. However, what is by far the most likely is that if someone hasn't seen any results for 5 months or within a 5-month personal training period, is that the personal trainer just isn't really that great. And like I said, we were having this chat and I mean, this wasn't an obese lady, she was quite petite, and therefore even the visceral fat thing is, it's possible. But, maybe a bit unlikely. It's much more likely to be the case in obese individuals that visceral fat leads to a solid swollen belly. You see it a lot in guys, the whole beer belly sort of thing. The personal trainer. So let's talk about the personal trainer. Like I said, I always assume personal trainers know what they're talking about if they've been working with someone for 5 months. But then again, you don't see results. And that's a bit of a red flag, right? You're putting the effort in, you see a PT, and you don't see any results. Now, she only saw the PT once a week, but still. And then we started talking a bit about the style of training that the personal trainer did. Now, the personal trainer used the Jenny Burrell method, because that's a thing. Now, Jenny Burrell is interesting because Jenny knows an awful lot of stuff. Jenny is excellent, and I would definitely, if you get a chance to work with her one-on-one as a client, then I would definitely do that. However, that is not necessarily what's being sold. Jenny Burrell mainly provides training programs for the health and fitness industry. And this is kind of more of an issue with the health and fitness industry. This is nothing to do with Jenny Burrell. I mean, the amount of knowledge that she has and her method, her courses all read fine as well. They all read like excellent bit of work. The problem is more that a course that, like Jenny Burrell, costs around £500. I think it's less. I think it's 400 on. It costs that to complete, and that's the advanced, like level 2 postpartum, whatever, the hell it is. And the problem is often that there's nothing at the end of it to show that you actually know what you're talking about. You've just paid for the course. And this is not at all uncommon in the personal training industry, right? Most courses that personal trainers get are pretty terrible. Or at least the way they apply them is pretty terrible. Let me put it that way. Now, what this personal trainer had done was given this lady a 6-week program, the Jenny Burrell way. And I haven't seen it, and I also don't need to, because I know where this is going. And then she did 1 session a week with her. Now, a standardized approach is fine if you're doing an online program, such as healthypostnatalbody.com, right? Little plug. Because you understand, you guys understand when you sign up to HPNB that you're not getting a completely personalized program, right? You can personalize it to a large extent, much more than other programs. And after 4 months, you can split up and do whatever you want to work on, much more. And of course, you always have me for support. But predominantly, it's a standardized program that you're following. Every 4 weeks, you get something new. Whereas if I train my clients, personal training clients, then it could be every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or I adjust things here and there, right? It could be 5 weeks. It could be a bit slower, right? That's a completely personalized approach. You can't do that with a standardized program. Also, standardized things don't work for 6 weeks. I've said this before. Every 4 weeks, you need to mix it up. For a personal trainer, it's not really acceptable, and it leads to problems taking that approach. So what this PT had done is said, yeah, I'm a Jenny Burrell licensee, because that's what they're called. This is what I need you to do for 6 weeks, and then we'll play about every Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock or something. We'll do another session. And that just doesn't really work that way. You really, for postnatal stuff, you cannot have just a qualification. You really need to specialize in this stuff and do it full time for a little while. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with the course itself. I've seen quick videos of it, and it looks fine. I think it's way too detailed. And I think most personal trainers looking at it will have no idea how they're meant to apply this stuff. But that is kind of what the point of the course is. The way the course is taught is these are all the things that you could be doing. But then it's still up to the PT to make this is what we're going to do sort of decision on it. And unless you specialize in postnatal PT, then you kind of don't. And most people that license the Jenny Burrell method will not be specializing in postpartum stuff. They just I don't know a single postnatal specialist that really just does this full time that got their qualifications from here. It is, and again, it's not an indictment of Jenny's method. It's fine. It would be similar to me writing up an instructor's course and selling that. Or Girls Gone Strong do this as well, but they just sell stuff. And after spending £1,000, you can call yourself a specialist. And yeah, that is just not the way of the world. It's just not the way the world works. So the problem with this particular lady, because, let's get back to the case in hand, is that the PT didn't know how to apply what I'm sure is an otherwise very useful method. So what we discovered is that she was saying that she can't feel the top parts of her abs engaging all that much. So that leads me to believe, and rightfully so, that when her PT talks about muscle engagement, as in you're engaging fine, she means you're bracing fine. And this is kind of what the problem is. You can brace your core even if you have very, very little muscle functionality. And all bracing does, basically you take a deep breath in and you squeeze everything tight. and everything becomes really rock hard, and therefore you can do certain exercises and it feels like your muscles are working. What your muscles, however, are not doing is contracting, right? And this is the important bit about the core breath. Learning to contract your muscles in the right order is key to activating properly. This is why I've spoke about this before, so apologies if you heard this. This is why I don't like this whole diaphragmatic breathing that a lot of people do. It's not quite right. It's almost there, but it's not quite right, in my humble opinion. It's much more diaphragmatic breathing is from the bottom down, and from the top down, and we want to go from the bottom up a little bit. And again, check out the YouTube video, which I still need to re-record, do a re-record of. But check out the YouTube video of the postnatal core breath, where I explain that in a bit more detail. And you need to do that for all your exercises. Every single exercise you do in your postpartum training program has to have that form of breathing in there. If you do not, then you're teaching your muscles not to work properly, or you start bracing your muscles, which is a real issue. And like I said, bracing is not the same as activation. And this is kind of what the issue here seems to be. Because obviously, like I said, we just did a 40-minute consult, and now I gave her access to the HPMB program for free. No sales, right? Always no sales. So that we can try to fix this. And then she can, of course, go out into the wide world and tell everybody how wonderful HPMB is, and I get some more members. Right? There is, of course, always an ulterior motive there. I just want more people to sign up. Even if you sign up for the first three months, I don't care. Cancel on day one. Just sign up. Get me the numbers, baby. And we need to help people. We need to move people away from Mutu and all those rip-off programs, which is what I'll openly call them now. So if your activation isn't right, then you'll never get a flat tummy. Even if the gap is 1 centimeter or 1 finger. You can have a round stomach and have no gap. 1 centimeter or 1 finger is completely fine. We don't class that as diastasis recti. But it does show, unless it's caused by bloating or by visceral fat, that your muscle activation really isn't there in the way that you need it to be. As soon as a personal trainer comes to you, these are my final words on this. As soon as a personal trainer comes to you and says, I am a licensee of a particular method, that's time to run away. Now, as I was saying to this lady during the Zoom call, I can franchise a McDonald's tomorrow, but it doesn't mean I know what goes into a Big Mac or why it goes into a Big Mac. Why all the ingredients that make up the Big Mac are important to be put together in a certain way. That is next level stuff, but that is the stuff that your PT should be knowing. That's the stuff that your PT should be aware of. Why something works a certain way. Because if they don't, you'll have no chance of recovery unless it's through blind bloody luck. Yes, make sure that you really work with someone that knows what they're talking about. So what I always say, ask everybody when you're dealing with a personal trainer, ask them if they are confident and qualified to keep training you when you're pregnant or know what they're doing when they're pre and postnatal. Ask the right questions. It is very easy to assume that personal trainers just kind of know what they're doing because they said so on the website. Right? I'm a postnatal specialist. Yeah, I believe you. Where is the information? How can you show me you know what they're doing? If a postnatal personal trainer cannot talk for the best part of 10 hours about diastasis recti, they have no idea what they're talking about. So confront people and just say, listen, I'm not being an arsehole here, but are you confident that you can get me the result I need? much more so than qualified. Because qualified, you have a then Jenny Burrell qualification, and therefore technically you have a qualification. However, are you confident you can get me the results? And it's amazing how often people will just start waffling when you ask them that question. Right? And of course, bullshit baffles brains and all that sort of stuff. And some people might have false confidence and all that sort of thing. But it doesn't take you 5 months to figure out that someone's not really working for you. And every personal trainer, I think this should be, you sign up for X number of sessions, right? But that is sold to you on. So I have the postnatal package, which is 24 sessions. And people sign up for 24 sessions with me. And if people were to find out after 6 that I don't know what I'm talking about, then they should be able to say, I'm going to stop training with you, give me my money back. Pro rata, for sure. But, that is how that should be going. Don't wait until the end of a package just because you've signed up for it and you already know it's kind of not working. Because it means the PT doesn't know. You're the customer in this relationship. If someone brings me moldy toast, I'm not going to eat the entire breakfast. I'm just going to give it back and just say, no, take this stuff away. Bring me new stuff, or indeed, I'll probably go somewhere else. Right? That is the thing. You have to work with people that know what they're talking about, but it's unfortunately still up to you to figure out whether they are or not. But it's perfectly fine to just say, no, this isn't working for me. After a month, I'm not seeing results. I'm not feeling it. I'm going to stop now. Give me my money back. It's completely fine. It probably would then actually do the personal trainer a bit of a favor, because they won't be comfortable training people that aren't getting results, training people that aren't happy, and they need to up their game a little bit. So you might just give them the kick up the old wazoo that they need. Anyways, is there an in the news this week? Yes, there is. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked the question. Eureka Alert had a news release out from the American Heart Association that most people giving birth in the US have poor heart health prior to pregnancy. It's a very interesting little article. I'm stunned at how low the number is almost. Only about 40% of women in the US who gave birth in 2019 had good heart health prior to their pregnancy, with excess weight being a major driver of poor pre-pregnancy health, followed by hypertension and diabetes. This is a real problem, guys. I mean, I know they don't tell you this stuff when you're trying to have kids and all that sort of stuff, but being in good shape makes your labor a hell of a lot easier, makes your pregnancy a lot easier. Good cardiovascular fitness makes everything so much easier than poor cardiovascular health. The amount of women that came to me prenatal when they were trying to get pregnant or when they were early stages of pregnancy, whose fitness levels we increased, are still thanking me when I bump into them for making their life so much easier by being able to do, 100 squats in a row or whatever. You are a much higher risk of having a shitty labor if you're not in half decent cardiovascular shape. And it's all linked to, of course, heart disease and all that sort of stuff, right? These are all the same people. So if you're listening to this, unlikely to be in poor health. But if you're listening to this and you don't do any cardio and you're thinking about having a second or third child or even a first, poor maternal heart health is related to poor outcomes for babies at birth, such as being born earlier, smaller weight, and poor heart health later in life, although that could, of course, just be because the parents are setting a good example, right? The connection is very, 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 very clear. If you want a happy, healthy baby, you have to be in relatively decent health yourself. I will link to the article. Like I said, 40%, that's just not acceptable, guys. I mean, this poor heart health causes more than 1 in 4 pregnancy-related deaths. it's an astonishing, it's so easy to fix. Run up and down the stairs a couple of times a day and your cardiovascular fitness will improve. I will link to this. It is, I think it's good reading, so to speak. It's tragic reading, but it's good reading for everybody to do. Anyways, that's it done for yet another week. Like I said, finished with this on a Friday. I'm a lucky boy. That means I can now do the transcript and get everything out on time for the thing. I also have to upload the old podcast onto our YouTube channel for tonight, of course. Because you know that, right? Every Sunday night, the full podcast, audio only on our all the podcast platforms. Wednesdays, you get your excerpt on the Healthy Postnatal Body YouTube channel, and Friday, the entire thing with subtitles, as I hit my mic, apologies, is also on YouTube. So that is my job this afternoon. Right, you have a tremendous week, and I'll catch up with you a week from now. Peter at healthypostnatalbody.com. Like and subscribe and do all that sort of fun stuff that you do. Right, bye now.
Words can't let them bring you down. Still, silence will drown the sound. Nobody knows where the wind will blow. How can they tell what the future holds? Get out of your head. Don't say it won't yet. Push the pedal and lay back. Take a breath and stay on track. Find what you've been searching for. Turn keys into every door. Nobody knows where the wind will blow. How can they tell what the future